Hey guys, how's it going? TFM Tech here, and on today's video, I'm going to be going over the very best $850 4K capable editing PC you guys can build right now. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Real quick, before we get into the part list, I want to make sure you guys know that this PC is strictly for content creation. There are multiple editing platforms that you can use. This PC, however, is going to be optimized and really built around Adobe, like the Adobe Software, Premiere, After Effects, things like that. I use Adobe, so this PC is built for Adobe Premiere or After Effects. Alright, with that being said, let's hop into the build. For starters, let's talk about the CPU. The CPU we're going to be using in the system is the Ryzen 5 3600. This is a 6-core, 12-thread CPU, and it's going to run you about $199. This CPU is great for content creation and any type of multi-threaded task you'll be putting it through. And in this computer, since we have an $850 budget, we will be using the stock Wraith air cooler that comes in the box with the CPU, and this will work absolutely fine for our current configuration. We're not going to be pushing the CPU too hard, so we won't need an aftermarket AIO or cooler. And a cool thing is that I'm pretty sure the Wraith air coolers that come with the AMD CPUs actually have like RGB, like I'm pretty sure the fan lights up or something in the fan lights up, and you can address that with the motherboard or like sync them up however you want. Honestly, it's up to you. I thought that was a cool feature. So that's going to pretty much wrap up the CPU. I'm not going to go into crazy detail about it in this video, but if you guys want a video like that, let me know in the comment section below, and I will do my very best to create the most informative video that I can on the Ryzen 5 3600. Alright guys, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the motherboard we're going to be using. So the motherboard we're going to be using in the system is the Asus TUF Gaming Plus B550M motherboard, M standing for Micro ATX, and this thing's going to run you $159.99. And because it's B550, this is compatible with Ryzen 5000 series CPUs, so that if you guys want to upgrade in the future to get better editing performance, you can, but it's also compatible with 3rd gen Ryzen, which is why we have the 3600 in here. Also, one thing to note, this board is the Wi-Fi version. It actually has Wi-Fi 6. The reason why I chose the Wi-Fi version of this board is because you won't have to worry about having an Ethernet cable while editing. You can always just connect to the Wi-Fi and then you're good to go. But there is a 2.5 gigabit LAN in this motherboard, so that if you do have access to a Ethernet cable or a wired connection and you want to take full advantage of really fast internet, you can. The rear I/O on this motherboard is also generous. You have a bunch of USB ports ranging from 2.0 to 3.2 type A. You'll also have an HDMI 2.1 port and a display 1.2 port on the back of this thing, as well as that 2 gigabit LAN that we talked about, and you also have a optical audio out. Alright, so now that the motherboard's out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the RAM we're going to be using in the system. For RAM, we're going to be using Corsair Vengeance LPX. We're going to be using a 2x8 kit, so 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes, and this is going to run you $85.99. For specs, we're going to be using 3200 megahertz with a cast latency of 16. 3200 megahertz isn't going to get you the best performance when it comes to AMD CPUs. They generally prefer faster RAM. But for our scenario, it's going to be used for video editing, content creation, and some light gaming. When it comes to gaming, that cast latency being 16 is definitely going to help you out, because the lower the cast latency, the faster the RAM. It's going to work just fine. You're really not going to notice a huge difference in performance if you bumped up to 3600 megahertz. And $85 for RAM, you really can't beat that, so that's why we went and chose these sticks. The GPU we're going to be using in the system is the Gigabyte NVIDIA GTX 1650 Super OC Edition, and this is going to run you about $159.99. This card's memory capacity is 4 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. This graphics card also supports 3 displays. You got DisplayPort, HDMI, and DVI, so you have a plethora of monitors or TVs or whatever you want to use for your editing. You can use. Now this GPU can be used for some light gaming, but the main reason why I included it in this build is because it's good for content creation, because NVIDIA's GPUs have an NVENC encoder, which is really good for display capture. Now this GPU is a little guy, it's only got one fan, but it's not the size that counts, it's how you use it. Alright, now that we have the graphics card out of the way, let's go ahead and hop into the storage we're going to be using in the system. So I'm going to break the storage up into 2 parts. The first part is going to be the boot drive, and the second part is going to be the mass storage, where we store videos and games if you want. Okay guys, so the boot drive we're going to be using in the system is the Crucial P2 250GB NVMe SSD, and this will run you about $42.99. This is an M.2 SSD, and it is actually 2280 or 80mm long. And for those who don't know, M.2 means it's actually installed on the motherboard. I would have liked to use a PCIe Gen 4 M.2 SSD in this build because our motherboard supports it, but at the same time our budget's $850. If you want and have extra room in the budget, you could pick up a PCIe Gen 4 M.2, but in this build we had a budget to stick to, so that's why I went with the Crucial P2 250GB SSD. This is 250 gigabytes, so it'll be plenty for Windows and any type of software that you install on it, hence boot drive, because you're installing Windows and any type of software that you want on it, so you'll get super fast boot ups. This isn't any type of storage for videos or games and things like that. I would keep this drive strictly for software and your operating system. Alright guys, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and head into the mass storage we're going to be using in the system. Okay, so for mass storage we're going to be using the Western Digital Blue 2TB PC hard drive, and this will run you about $49.99. This hard drive is honestly bulletproof. Western Digital is a really reputable brand and you won't have any problems with this hard drive. This thing spins at 5400 RPM and has a 256 megabyte cache. So whatever that means to you, that's the hard drive we're going to be using in the system. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let's hop into what's going to be powering all of the parts we just talked about. The power supply we're going to be using in the system is the EVGA 600BQ. This is an 80 plus bronze rated power supply, and it's going to run you $69.99. This is a 600 watt semi-modular power supply, meaning that the 24 pin connector that runs to the motherboard is permanently connected. You can't take that off, but the VGA cables and the SATA cables can be detached so that you don't have a huge nest of cables that you have to sort out in the bottom of your case. And like I said, this is an 80 plus bronze rated power supply, so expect 85% or higher efficiency under typical loads. All around solid PSU that's going to provide this PC with plenty of power. Alright, let's move on to the case, shall we? We can't go much farther without that. For the case, we're going to be using the Cooler Master Master Box Q300L. And this is going to run you about $48.99. This is a micro ATX case, so it's going to be pretty small compared to your mid-tower ATX cases. Don't quote me on this. I saw this in a Q&A on the Amazon listing, but there seems to be 3 120mm fans included with this case, 1 rear exhaust fan and 2 front intake fans. So theoretically, this case being mesh and having 3 fans in it, it should have pretty decent airflow. But that shouldn't really matter. This is an editing and light gaming PC, so we shouldn't be pushing it too hard anyway to really need that many fans and that much positive airflow. And a feature about this case that I actually really liked was that the I/O is movable around the edges of the case, but keep in mind the side panel on this case is made out of acrylic and not tempered glass, so it could be a little bit more prone to scratching, but for $48.99 you can't really expect, the greatest quality, and as long as you handle the case with care, you should be fine. Alright guys, so for the remaining $50 that we have for our budget, I think a nice touch would be a pair of extension cables and LED light strips for the inside of the case. This is just going to spruce things up. It's going to make it look a lot nicer. The extension cables, this is a set of Kotex or Kotak or whatever the name is called. They're going to set you back about $19.99. It's going to have a 24 pin, a 6 pin, and a 4x4 pin for the CPU. These have absolutely no impact on performance, but I think they will add a very nice touch to the build and just make it look that much nicer. Also, for the LED light strips, they're gonna cost you about 16 something, or like $16.98 I believe. This is gonna add a great touch. You can plug it right into your motherboard and it'll hook right up with Aura Sync and everything, so you can have your whole build synced up. I think it'll look really cool, and it just adds a nice touch, and it just looks mwah. Alright guys, so if you total everything up, it's going to cost you roughly $854 to build this PC. So not too bad, only $4 over budget. If you guys enjoyed the video, a like would be much appreciated. If you guys have any comments or any suggestions or preferences that might, work better in the system or bring the cost down, who knows, that might help somebody out. So definitely leave them in the comment section below. I'm always open to feedback, and I will try my very best to read and respond to all of them. If you guys enjoyed the video and you want to see more videos just like this one, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell next to it so that you get notified when we upload. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.